Hello. All right, everybody, thanks for your patience. Without further ado, I am going to introduce our next keynote speaker, Dr. Chenxi Wang. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Texas. Very happy to be here. I live in California. I don't get to Texas that often, but I love Texas barbecue, so thank you for having me. I am going to talk about, mostly today, about artificial intelligence and what the impact is to cybersecurity. So a little bit about myself. I'm the founder and general partner of a cyber-focused venture fund called Rain Capital. I'm also on the board, global board for OWASP, and which I trust a lot of you are members of. I'm also a member of the board of directors of MDU Resources, which is a public utility company. So other than serving on boards and doing investment, I'm actually a cybersecurity person, been trained in cybersecurity technology, been in the industry for a long time, and I also have a PhD in computer science. All right, so part of my work, even though I do investment a lot, part of my work is to understand cutting-edge technology and understand how to evaluate technologies as well as business. So recently, I had to go to Australia again for a board meeting, and here I am in the morning. I had to give a talk at an event in San Francisco, so I just packed my stuff and got in the Uber and went to the event and gave a talk. And then afternoon, another Uber, to the airport. And I came out of Uber, and I was like, crap, I didn't have my passport. Right, so I was flying to Australia, because I'm so used to getting on the plane and just have my driver license and stuff. So I called my husband, and luckily I had enough time, and he dropped everything and brought passport to me. So I was fine, right? So I got through security and everything, got on plane. And I was flying to Sydney and connecting at Auckland, New Zealand. So I came out of the plane at Auckland waiting for my connection flight. I was a little jet lagged. I wanted to go buy a cup of coffee. I went to the coffee shop in the airport and ordered a cup of coffee and went to pay, and I searched all over my bag and I had no wallet. So there I was, right? So I apparently that day left home with no wallet, no passport, and wanting to board a flight to Australia. So there I was in Auckland. I was like, what do I do? And of course, I'm a social media fiend, right? So first thing I did, stepping out of the plane, I was like, in Auckland. And then I was like, I had no wallet and no passport. Well, at that point, I had a passport. So I was like, what do I do? And a lot of my friends on Twitter was like, oh, I have people in Australia, you can borrow some cash. And I was like, well, what do I do, right? And I actually called my credit card company, and they were like, we can FedEx you a card, but internationally it would take a week. And I was only going to be there for like 4 days. So, and I was like, okay. I was at the coffee shop, and I said, well, I have mobile pay. I don't carry Apple, I carry Pixel phone. So I said, well, let's try mobile pay. And it worked great. So I said, okay, well, I'm just gonna be in Australia for a week, and I'm gonna run this experiment, how far I can get with mobile pay, no wallet, no driver license, but does have a passport. So I got to the hotel, and the hotel, usually in the US, you have to give a credit card, right? There, they were like, you got your passport, no credit card, that's fine, we'll check you in. I said, hey, this is what I posted on Twitter when I checked in. I said, well, hopefully I can get around with mobile payment. Otherwise, I'll have to rely on the kindness of strangers in Australia, which actually comes in abundance. Now, in the end, I went for 4 days in Australia without a single time having to take out a credit card. So mobile payment was everywhere. I got on a ferry in the Australia harbour, went from the harbour to Manly Beach, and even buying tickets on the harbour and subway, all use mobile pay, right? So at dinner, I even went into a shop to buy some clothing, all mobile pay, and no problem. So that's when I was thinking, gosh, the world is really changing. Right? This is what I experienced as a firsthand, what we typically call digital transformation. Right? Everything is moving from the more physical sort of instantiation of it to the digital counterpart. So really is digital technologies everywhere to change and in some fundamental ways change all aspects of our everyday life and also the businesses that I work with and evaluate every day. But the interesting thing is I didn't just talk about this story for the funny parts of it, although it is funny. After I came back from Australia, just so happens I got a pitch for a company, a new startup that's coming from Asia actually. And this startup, and combined with the experience I just had in Australia, was so interesting and kind of sobering to me. So what this company does is they have a way of pooling cell phone data, right? So locations, what kind of apps you use, and this is, again, it's a company out of Asia, so the way they are able to access cell phone data is different than here, right? So they were able to piece together data from different sources to tell you this phone number belongs to a truck driver. This phone number belongs to a policeman. This phone number is a student. This phone number is a doctor. Just by processing the movement of the phone, right? Where does the phone go location-wise? And what time does the phone appear in this location? And what apps does this phone have? And they told me that they're able to very accurately identify the occupation of the person who holds the phone. Now, what is the application of this kind of data? They are selling some of the data feeds to investment banks, to Wall Street entities for very specific reasons. They're able to tell the investors that last month, this manufacturing facility had, I don't know, 3,000 truck drivers showed up there, right? But the month before, they only had 700. What does that mean? That means this particular manufacturing facility is doing a lot more business this month. Now, maybe I should go buy their stock. It's really, really interesting data when you think of how you can really look at the world from the movement of our cell phones, and I was like, dude, I was in Australia buying all these things on my mobile payment, right? If they were able to get hold of my data, well, I don't know what they'll decipher from that 1 week movement, but the high order bit is we are all doing a lot more on our phones, using digital means, and our footprint is getting more and more in this digital world. Hence, there are a lot more information people can pull and decipher about us as individuals, also about businesses. And those information can lead to really interesting applications. Some of them are very, very scary. others really help us live a better and more efficient life. So how do you handle the two different, the whole spectrum of implications with this digital transformation and the abundance of data? And that is a question that's sort of been on my mind. Some of the other interesting things that I have been looking at, this is again from the pitches of companies that I've received and also things that I've been looking at. I don't know if any of you work in manufacturing. Yes, some of you, right? So apparently the data, and you can tell me whether it's true or not. So there's about 5 to 10% of payroll fraud in manufacturing plants where, because typically today you swipe your card to go in and then they record what time you go in the manufacturing plant. Some of them are paid by hours, right? So there's 5 to 10% fraud in that people will swipe for other people, or you come out early, or do all kinds of things to avoid working but still get paid. So 5 to 10% fraud in a large manufacturing company is a lot. So they've been looking at different technologies to help them reduce the fraud rate. So one of the applications I've seen so far is kind of interesting. So they have, instead of having you swipe the badge, there's facial recognition iPads, right, at the entrance to the plant. And so you go and you take a picture and they recognize your face, and then the turnstile opens once the authentication is done. But at the same time, this information is sent in that instance to the payroll system and is seamlessly recorded what time you went in, and along with the action of authentication, the follow-up actions, turnstile open, and then payroll log. And they've also done it in different parts of the plant so that they could tie you going in there with your movement inside the plant to say, hey, this person did go in, but throughout the day, he or she is working because they are showing up at different parts of the building, as opposed to they were just out there smoking a cigarette. And that data, again, is fed to the payroll system so that there's evidence that there's entrance to the building and there's evidence work being done. And apparently one of the large electronics manufacturing companies in the world, their CISO told me that they are able to reduce the fraud rate from a payroll fraud rate from a double digit to a single digit just by deploying this one system. But at the same time, he said, now I've got a lot more personal data in my system that I have to protect because I've got facial recognition data, I've got people movement data. A lot of them, depending on which country you're from, have PII protection consequence. Another interesting example, also the use of data. There's a ton of health tech innovation. So this one I really like. A company I know in San Francisco is working with a network of hospitals to, the first application they do is get data from the hospital on how many beds are occupied a day, on a given day, and how long a patient stays in the hospital. And they got like 5 years worth of data or something. So by churning through the data and build a model, and along with data they get elsewhere, such as weather, what events are happening, they're able to build a model, a predictive model, to tell the hospital on any given day how many empty beds they're gonna have on a given day. Now, why is that interesting? Because If I know today is going to be a slow day, I can staff it right. I don't have to have as many nurses or doctors. Also, if I have more capacity than I had originally thought in my hospital, I can take more overflow patients from neighboring healthcare and hospital facility. So the projection, now this is still an experiment, ongoing experiment, but the projection from the hospital states that they should be able to increase their revenue and decrease cost. Well, I think let's just look at increased revenue by a double digit, like by 20-some%, which is a really rare occurrence these days for a hospital. So this again illustrates the power of the right use of data and data science. Data science and AI is really, well, that is a typo, seeping into our lives as a, well, maybe it is seeping into our lives in some ways. Another example I like to give, it's kind of scary, but it's really, really interesting. Does any of you know heart rate variability, what that is? So heart rate variability is a biosignature, if you will, that each of us has. So instead of measuring heart rate per minute, so what they measure is the difference between the peaks, right? So the peaks are not exactly same intervals. They have a little bit of difference. And there's a mathematical calculation to measure your heart rate for some period of time and tell you what your HRV is. And if you read the bioscience literature, there's actually a lot of research today on getting your HRV data, heart rate variability, which is actually a fairly accurate prediction, predictive characteristic for certain diseases. So if your heart rate variability is falling to a certain range, you're more susceptible to certain diseases. Now, how do we get heart rate variability? Traditionally, you have to wear a device, a monitor, right? And then it reads off it. So it's not easy to get that. However, this is an Israeli company that I've been looking at. It's a really interesting, again, AI-based bioscience startup. So they have a way to process video, just like if I'm here talking and the video is being taken. Now, this is not high def, probably. I don't know if they can do it. But if they have a high def video of someone, this person doesn't have to do anything, right? Just a video. And they're able to just process the video to pull out your heart rate information from the video. And the way they do it is every time our heart beats, the blood comes to the face, right? And it comes behind the skin on our face, and ever so slightly changes the light that reflects off our skin, of our cheeks. And so they just focus on these two regions, and every time the reflection of the light changes, they record that as a heartbeat. And they have tuned their algorithm to a degree that it's actually scarily accurate. So I'm going to show you a video. This is the demo they have. Is this woman is wearing a heart rate monitor, which records her heart rate, and at the same time, they're taking a video of her and pulling off heart rate information from just the video and overlay the two information to see whether the actual reading of heart rate and the reading of the video to see if it is accurate. Hopefully the video plays. Okay, now starting. The blue line, or the black line, is the monitor reading. The brown line is the line that they process out of the video. Look, after a while, the two lines are very much aligned. So what does that mean? That means today we have technologies that can remotely read your heart rate variability biosignature. Insurance companies really like it. They are looking at different kinds of applications. You can kind of imagine what kind of application they have in mind. However, there are a lot of other applications, right? So it's, let's see, this, present mode. So this is another video they did. This was Mark Zuckerberg's, oh, no, that didn't work. Yes. That work? Yeah. So, there's no, it's okay. There's actually some sound, but you can see that they are pulling out his heart rate and the woman sitting behind him, and they have the information of the pulse rates. Like the blue one is his at the bottom there, and the brown one is hers. And they also can, by looking at the heart rate, they plotted out the stress level of the person who's talking. Ooh. So. I'm going to go back there. So if you look at the stress level plot, right? So when he said Cambridge Analytica, his heart rate went up, the stress level went up. So this is kind of scary. This is, I don't know if it will be a virtual lie detector, but at least they kind of know your emotion behind the speech. And you guys are in security, I'm in security. We know that in security, you can sell vulnerability, right? You can sell a 0-day, these days, if a 0-day of iOS could be sold in millions of dollars. What if it's a biosignature of a head of state? How much can you sell? What if you, by processing a video of president of some country, you know that this person might be susceptible to seizure, maybe? And you could somehow feed them a video that triggers seizure. Wouldn't that be a really, really scary scenario? And we're not that far from it. And what is the price of human vulnerability that we can sell? We don't know. These are all interesting questions to ponder. And because I'm a security person, so the first thing I look at is, whose job is it to deliver trust, to ensure trust in this world where data is of abundance and information can be had in a fairly cheap way? And of course, computer scientists are working on newer and more innovative way to process data, to pull data out of ordinary things in ways that we didn't even know before. And whose job is it to ensure that these things are done in a trustworthy way and in a way that has the right societal impact versus otherwise? So what is trust? Trust is really, we have confidence in the strength, in the truth of something, right? And these days, trust is actually really hard to come by, imagining all these things could happen. And do you guys know deepfake? You heard of deepfake? Have you watched the videos? No? Do you want to see one? So deepfake is a way to use deep learning to basically transform a person's face into a different person's face with the same movement of mouth and expressions, and it is eerie. It is eerie. So this one, Now, we don't have audio, so it's a little disappointing. No. Is there any way we can get audio? I don't know. Can we get audio? This is a video of Obama talking about something that he never actually spoke these words. And you look at him, and he looks like he's talking in those words. He also, part of this video, said, I think President Trump is an idiot. He didn't say those words. But I don't know if he said these words in real life, but in this video, he didn't say those words, but those words were in the video. And it's actually done by this actor, the voice dub. Oh, there's a real-time tech support. It's okay if we can't do it, but the sound is interesting because it does sound like him. Does it work? Are you going to have to turn on back there? Okay. So let's wait a little bit. And there's also another video, if you haven't seen it on Instagram, of Kim Kardashian. And the video of her say, all I want is manipulating people on the internet and make a lot of money doing it. And that is like, look like her, it's her voice, and she obviously never said those words in public. You get it. Can I play the video now? Let's see. Still not working. Can you? Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So basically, he said words that he never said before. What? Oh, it's working? Video YouTube, not my thing. Let's see if it works. Oh, yes, sorry.
For instance, they could have me say things like, I don't know, Killmonger was right. Ben Carson was in the Sun. Or, how about this? Simply, President Trump is a total complete dipshit.
All right, so that's enough, I think. So I don't mean to offend anyone, but I just want to show the effect of it. Now, if you didn't know deepfake existed, it would be really hard to watch a video like this and thinking, oh, he didn't say these words, right? So this is, again, an artificial intelligence mechanism that when somebody's talking, they process the video and pull out the structure of your face, the movement of your mouth, and movement of, sort of your brows with respect to the different parts of the face, and then they replace it with a different person's face, but with the same kind of movement that's pulled out as a model. And then they can make that person say the same thing and do the same facial expressions. It's really eerie. There's also another branch of AI research called adversarial use. And the adversarial use examples, if you will, are really, really interesting to computer security. I've been keeping an eye on it for a few years now. This is one of the early examples of adversarial sample. What does that mean is you can manipulate the data that goes into an algorithm, which then will trick the algorithm into giving you the wrong reading. So this is to your left, right, is a picture of a panda. And if you show this picture to a facial recognition or the picture processing algorithm, it'll tell you, yeah, it's a panda. Because there are a lot of algorithms that are trained on recognizing animals and stuff. But the researcher was able to show that if you just take the vector image of the panda and overlay it with this sort of gibberish image, which is also a vector image, overlay it, then the resulting image to a naked eye, to human eye, is exactly like that. It's a panda. But if you then feed that composite image that to your right to the same facial recognition algorithm, it'll say it's a gibbon because it has manipulated data in a very subtle way that tricks the algorithm to, instead of classifying it into one class, it classifies into a different class. And this was the very first known or published examples of how you could intentionally manipulate data to reach a different conclusion of a predictive AI algorithm. And then following that research, there's a branch of AI now, it's called a Generative Adversarial Network. So what happens is you have a bunch of data to train an algorithm, and this mechanism will have two models that are trained by either same set of data or similar set of data. And then the first model will start generating things. Will generate this is actually an oil painting that's done by an AI algorithm. So imagine this one model is generating oil painting. And every time it generates an oil painting, the second model will look at it and will try to decipher whether this is a real painting or this is generated by AI. And the first few times, the second model will always be able to tell. We'll say, okay, this is fake, this is real, this is fake. But then this first model will then, based on the result of the fake or real, will tune its algorithm. Will get better and better every time. And this is essentially two models like competing with each other. And then at some point, it'll generate a result, either a painting or something, that will fool the second model. And when that happens, you've reached the result you want. So this is a famous painting done by a guy who was actually 19 years old at the time, who was really specialized in this kind of GAN model, GAN, GAN model generation. And he did this painting. And in 2018, not this painting, but a few paintings that was generated by GAN was auctioned off, I think two paintings auctioned off $425,000 on Christie. Because they were, not only they were the first known sort of art that's generated by AI, but they were of really good quality. They mimicked the Impressionism look and feel. So not only speech, facial recognition can be faked, artwork can be faked. So what is real anymore? I'm going to skip that. That one was also interesting, but I think we're a little bit low on time. But the societal impact, we talked about some of the attacks, adversarial impact, but the societal impact of having the abundance of data and having the way of processing data and getting information at a rate, at a precision that was not previously possible, the impact goes beyond just attacks, beyond faking things. So this is a video that's generated actually by a European company. And so it's a regular, just a subway, everyday subway surveillance video. And they're able to use the AI algorithm to not only identify here's a person, here's a person, here's a person, but then pull out very detailed characteristics of a person, the way this person moves, what the person wearing, and what is his or her emotion at that moment. And this is an example of what they see as the result on the dashboard. So, the attributes of a person, this is just a person walking on the subway platform. So, is it gender, age, possible age, is it less than 30, is it less than 45, and the hair color, all that, and it goes on like, is this person of good health and all that. That can just be processed out of a regular video that people going to work. And we have all seen those Hollywood surveillance movies where interesting things could happen, and this is actually not even a very interesting use of AI algorithm, but this is the reality today. This experiment was done in 2018 by ACLU. ACLU took, at that time, Amazon's facial recognition algorithm, which was available publicly through API, and they fed the 50 Congress members' face into the facial recognition algorithm, along with a database of 200,000 inmates' also face. And then, guess what they got? The algorithm misidentified 28 Congress members as the same person in the inmate database. 28 out of 50. Oh, no, wait a minute. Is it 50 or more than 50? More than 50, I think. But still, 28 people, right? We think they're not inmates, right? But what's interesting is within the set that is misidentified, people of color were of a higher percentage. So what does that mean? Is the algorithm is weaker in correctly identifying people of color, of processing their facial expressions and facial characteristics. And why would that be the case? Because the training data that goes into these AI algorithms had less data on people of color than Caucasian folks. Because you have less data to work with, so your model is not as accurate. And this is clearly a problem. So who is there to ensure that the AI models we build, which has impact on everyday life, has the correct type of training data that goes into it, so it will not be biased, it will not make mistakes in a way that is very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not interesting, but scary. Also, Amazon, 2 years ago, did this experiment that, because they got tons of thousands, well, maybe even more, hundreds of thousands of resumes every year, and they just couldn't, looking through them, just not possible. So they had an OCR, optical character recognition algorithm built, which is just to first level filtering of the resumes before it gets to an actual HR person. So what happened was they found out after running this algorithm for several months that women's resumes were just not getting through, because the algorithm was biased against women's names. If your name had recognizable women's name, it will rank you lower. And they did this experiment because they took a set of same resumes, changed the name, changed from Catherine to Chad. And it went through. So why? Because the training data they used had less women less high-ranked women candidate information in the training data. So the algorithm is not really at fault. It correctly say, oh, if it's a woman, the success rate is lower. So let's not give this resume a chance. Because the algorithm doesn't care if it's a woman or man. It just say this set of data, success rate is low. That set of data, success rate is high. And then Amazon figured this out, and they had to like stop this program. But how would Amazon know in the beginning that the data they use to train this algorithm is biased? And how does anybody know that if we were to embark on this kind of analysis, that we have the right set of training data to work from? And this is actually a big debate in the AI community because the real world is biased, right? And so there's one school of thought in the AI community that says, hey, the real world is biased. We just giving a representation of the real world to the algorithm. And another school of thought is, yeah, the real world is biased, but doesn't mean we have to repeat this in the AI world. We have to fix bias. Now, when you get to fix bias, you're kind of like a god. So how far do you change the bias? How far, where is the center of fairness? It's really hard to determine, because now you're playing not only with data, you're playing with actual societal impact. So again, going back to what's real, what's fair, we don't, right? In the early days, remember the saying, nobody knows you're a dog on the internet? Right? Today, nobody knows you're an AI on the internet. The big question a lot of computer scientists are wondering is, how far are we until an AI algorithm can very confidently pass the Turing Test? You guys know what the Turing Test is, right? So today, even though I've shown you a ton of interesting examples of AI manipulating data or generating results look like real, still, it has not been the case that an AI algorithm can consistently pass Turing test. Because why? Most of the AI algorithm has limited scope. It's written for a chatbot for a specific purpose, or it's processing specific set of application data. To be able to pass Turing test, it has to be a general purpose algorithm. Just like a human, you can take any kind of input. You ask me any question, I'll give you an answer. It may not be the right answer, but I know how to process this question and generate an answer. The AI algorithms today, and I don't know how many of you have seen the so Google I/O conference. Every year they have these really interesting demos, and last year the Google CEO did this demo of having AI calling a restaurant to make a reservation. Actually, I've used that quite a few times, and it's really, really real. I mean, the AI algorithm would even say, oh, I want 3 people. Oh, no, maybe 4 people tonight. And they did this live on stage with a restaurant in New York, making reservations, with a Chinese restaurant in New York. And the person who picked up the phone on the other end had no idea it was AI calling her. And she's a worker in the Chinese restaurant with heavy Chinese accent, speaking back on, how many people you want, and that algorithm correctly answered all her questions. But that particular algorithm, if you give the algorithm a question about what's the weather like today, it may not be able to answer really well, because the core of the algorithm anticipates questions, interactions in a booking restaurant type of interaction. It doesn't process others really well. So it does not qualify as a general purpose AI algorithm. Now, this is a 2014 test where hundreds of people were brought in Leeds University to interact with a chatbot. They were given randomly either interact with a chatbot or interact with a real human, and then in the end write down whether they think they're interacting with a bot or a human. So 33% of the test subject misidentified AI versus human. So 33%, it's not quite at the level of passing. This particular test, for instance, it's actually disqualified in the end because they put in too much constraints. But 33% is not low in the real world use case, right? But again, it's not quite passing the Turing test. But what happens when it does pass Turing test? I was going to do a video of, do you guys want to see this? Making reservations? This is interesting. I actually, now when you go to Google Map, if you search for a business and it pops up, some businesses has a, underneath it has, say, reserve a table. You just reserve it. In the back end, Google is calling that restaurant to reserve for you. Yeah. And we have. So the man's voice is the AI generated voice. The woman is a real restaurant worker in New York, right? Can you tell? You can't tell. I was so impressed when I saw this. But the problem is, obviously, as AI gets more and more sophisticated, it's just harder and harder for us to tell whether it's AI or human. And as we know in computer security, there are a lot of scenarios in which we need to tell whether this is human or not a human, right? Some of you work on authentication, right? So how do we do this? When the chatbots are getting more and more sophisticated, when AI is getting more and more sophisticated, the only way we can determine between humans and computers are, any guess? So, yeah? Find problems that are hard for computers but are easy for humans. What kind of problem are there that are easy for humans and difficult for computers? I'm sorry?
Emotional.
Say it again?
Emotional.
Emotional. How do you process emotion? So Turing has this famous, well, not a quote, but famous response to a challenger in his lifetime, I guess. So this person was saying that to Turing, that you can never have a computer that as equivalent as I am, because how does the computer feel emotion? How does the computer feel tell me the feeling of rain on my skin? And then Turing retorted back, says, you think you know emotions, but how do you demonstrate to me that you know emotion? That's the question, is you know you're a person, but how do you, the trick is not you know, is you have to convince other people that you know emotions better than the computer algorithm. And that demonstration is hard. Now, this is a simple example that's getting more and more actually not as clear-cut anymore, but CAPTCHA, everybody knows. The reason CAPTCHA was generated was that it's, at that time, optical character recognition algorithm was hard for computers, but easy for humans. Right? Human look at twisted characters and can tell very easily, but for computers it's harder. Now today, they don't actually do that much anymore, right? So today they just ask you to click, I'm not a robot, right? You have this experience, right? So why do they go from having you recognize these twiggly characters to just click a button that says I'm not a robot? Do you know? Do you know why? Well, they can't. The bots can click buttons, but guess what? It's hard for them to mimic the way you move the mouse to click the button. Humans moving mouse is never in a consistent way. You never move in a straight line. You move in a way that only humans do, right? Because you're just not that precise. Seriously. And turns out the computer can fake not precise, but for them to be not precise in the same way humans not precise, that's actually hard. So that's why they're actually doing this, I'm not a robot. All they want is to show how you drag the mouse across the screen and click it. And if you're able to do it in the human way, you're human. AI is hard in identifying nuances. Humans are good in identifying nuances. So I'll give you one example. A friend, not actually a friend, but somebody you recognize. Then this is a fitness model picture online. And these are, again, other models online. So as a human, I look at the picture of the friend, and I look at the three women picture, kind of look like her. I'm like, that's not her, because I know her. Those women look like her, but that's not her. But if you feed these group of picture into an AI algorithm, this is an actual experiment. The algorithm one, I'm not going to say whose, 73% misidentified, meaning that 73% of the time, actually, I'm sorry, 73% of the time it correctly identified, 27% of the time misidentified. So I was wrong in the column there. And algorithm 2 performed even worse, right? So what that says, 20-some% of the time, they misidentify this woman as part of that data set, while she's not. The reason that she's misidentified is she has the characteristics of similar to the other women, where the distance between eyes, the distance between the brow and the mouth, these are all computer, the information that algorithm pulls out and calculate. But for human doesn't look at that. Human kind of have an imprint of a face, and they look at another face, they're like, oh, not the same person, even though if they have the same distance between eyes and the same distance between. So that's the human processing nuances, computers process data. Now, given that is the case, you could actually generate algorithm, having specific data that you can spot the human user consistently versus the AI, the bot. So the way to do it, this is just an experiment. You put up, somebody the face. Then you put up a group of faces that are similar, but with one other face that's that person's face. And then you ask the human, you ask whoever comes to authenticate, pick the picture that is that person, right? The first face. Now humans, knowing that friend, has to be a familiar friend face, will always correctly identify who that is. And AI would have, as I said earlier, 73%, 68% confidence. Now in that, there's a gap there. Human can correctly identify, AI cannot. But a real world use case is harder because you can't just keep feeding them those faces and have the human authenticate. That usability is not there, right? But theoretically, that's possible. And if you want more confidence, what you could do is you could then flip the problem around. You can show the human a stranger's face, that's a face that he or she's never seen it before, and then you gave them another set of faces to say, hey, pick out one that's that person. Now, given that's a stranger's face, the human's guessing will be probably as good as random guessing. But computers will actually make a better guess because it's trying to pick out the same characteristics. So there again is the trying to tell the difference between how human process information and how computer process information. So as you see, more and more authentication algorithms these days are picking on that difference. Humans are less precise, computers are more precise. And that is an interesting difference. So how much time do I have? We have 15 minutes. Okay, so I'm coming to an end so we can have some questions. In the artificial intelligence world, you have the ranking of complexity and sophistication of things you can do. Right? Natural language processing is the lowest, almost the lowest on the rung. And then you have processing of audio and video information. Then you have being able to perform a physical task by a computer, by a robot, as opposed to a human perform physical tasks. Then you go to thought patterns. How does human process thought patterns, and how does computer repeat thought patterns? And then, as this gentleman there correctly said, emotions. How do we replicate human emotions? And it is really not about thinking of emotion, it's about the interaction of emotions. Can I ask you a question that you give me an answer which tells me you correctly generated an emotional response to that question? And what would that question be? And what is the anticipated emotional response if you were a human? That is a really, really interesting research area in artificial intelligence today. And at the end, and that actually deception I added in the end, I said, if all these sophistication levels been passed and computers can deceive humans, in the end, that is where all fails, because if they are not only able to process language, process audio, video, process a lot of data, but they're able to actually correctly give you information that deceives you. Then we're entering an era that is post-AI. And if we look to the future where, hey, it's not working. Moore's laws are giving us more and more resources to play with, right? So the problems that are hard for computers today may not be hard for computers tomorrow, because we have more resources to play with, and we're better at generating AI algorithms now, we're better at classification, and also we have more and more data every day to play with. So that works for both sides. More data, more resources are available for the defenders, so we can do things better, but they're also available for the attackers, so they can attack us in a more sophisticated way. But whose job is it to ensure trust in the AI world, in the post-AI world, if it is not the job of computer security professionals? I think it's absolutely our community's job to ensure that the information that we use, the data we get, the decisions we make in the future are trustworthy, are robust, are sound. And how do we do that? I think a lot of us should become data scientists. Computer security expertise, a lot of it is about spotting signals from noise. right? So we're looking at extracting events from SOC that are interesting to process, but that fundamentally is a data analytics job, even though on a day-to-day basis you may not think of that way. So I think many of us, we would have a better, interesting platform to play with if we were to pick up more data science, data analytics capabilities as computer security person and as a community. So what is data science, right? It's really about giving you a bunch of data into a black box, could be an algorithm, could be a human-assisted algorithm. At the end, you come out with different classification. So is this data item belong in the red class? This data item belongs in the blue class? All AI does is that. Not much beyond that today. But the transformation, meaning that going from data to that classification, is extremely interesting. And you can see lots of applications for computer security, right? Is the blue class the legitimate class, the red class, the anomaly, the attacks, the threats? Those are the differentiation, the determination that we need to make. So just to close up, you saw some deepfake videos earlier, and there's obviously a lot of research now focusing on how to spot deepfake, right? And that is a defense task. So the way to spot it, not foolproof, but when a person speaks, this person has a particular way of tilting his or her head. The way they change the corner of the mouth, how they move, is also fairly particular to that person. So getting those information out and comparing with a deep fake video, or comparing with just another video to see if that's deep fake, that is where the research today lies. And again, that is nothing more than anomaly detection, right? So you're building a model of what's normal, and you're trying to detect the new item, whether that's normal or not. So for us, I think defendable AI is the future, right? So what is defendable AI is we have to develop models and test methods to build trust in our model. So we have to be comfortable and confident that the data is robust, is not tampered, is robust, and is fair according to some metric of fairness. And we can use generative adversarial network to test the robustness and soundness of the model. And another thing that we need to do, which I didn't even get into this talk, which is a whole other talk can go along with it, is how do we establish privacy baselines for the use of data, for the dissemination, and for the correct governance of analytics on the data. So with that, I'm going to conclude. This is my contact information. Feel free to send me email or follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. I am happy to take questions now if there is any. Yes?
So I work in telecom, and there's a lot of applications of natural language processing. But there's some confusion on when using acoustic models to translate voice into text. Whether that's considered recording.
Consider what?
Considered being a recording for purposes of eavesdropping or wiretapping laws. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the privacy implications and the legal implications of translation of voice to text.
So the question is, this gentleman works in telecom, and they have lots of voice recordings and natural language processing capabilities that can take the voice recording into actual text. And there's confusion about what the legal implication is. Does that constitute voice tapping, right? Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't answer that question from a legal standpoint, but what I do know from discussion with my friends who are in the privacy sector is that if the recording is public, as opposed to, lawyers, clients, that kind of confidential conversation. But if the recording is public, and if I consented for this video to be published, I have no way of claiming that is a wiretapping, right? So, but in your case, I don't know if the video recordings are public. Hence, the usage of what, I guess, taking a step back, what my friend said, and then you need to check that, the privacy implication that governing the video recording is the same that governs the text, because the text is generated from the recording. So, but check with your legal counsel. Don't take my word for it. Other questions? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's real, what's not real.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you took that same kind of methodology with the paintings and use that with the deep fake, which is real, which is not.
Yeah.
And then the algorithms will go into competition to out-trick themselves. This is like bring on real chaos with this. Deep fake videos, heads and states, or declaring war. I mean, it could be really.
Right.
How many other thoughts besides the ability for the algorithm to pick up the fact that it is deepfake?
Right.
Using PKI to certify the data,
Yeah.
or something like that, or do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a really good question. This gentleman asked, because I showed deepfake video, I showed briefly some of the mitigation methods. There's also the GAN method, which is two AI algorithms competing against each other and making one like subsequently produce better results. And he was asking that, this whole field is just going in the direction that's really hard to get your hands around, and you could get to a stage where, head of state would declare war on each other with a deepfake video, and are there other, I guess, mitigation methods outside of just processing the data and making sure the data or detecting deepfake? Are there methods like PKI, signing the video? And absolutely, yes. So this talk focused on what's happening in the AI community, right? This is all about how do I make sure my algorithm is accurate, or how do I detect this is deepfake? They don't, in this talk and the papers that I've been following don't really talk about what are the external compensating controls that you can use to mitigate some societal impact. But you bet that outside of that community, a ton of discussion is happening on what can we do if there's deepfake video out there that really has severe consequence to society. Absolutely. Source authentication, where it came from, the watermarking, there are people working on watermarking of videos, tamper resistance videos, all that are will come to play, I think, when this actually becomes a problem that we need to deal with. The question right now is, how far can these mechanisms go, right, before it really becomes a widespread problem? And today, the compensating controls around it not yet deployed because it's not quite a problem. But at some point, yes. Yes, another question.
The button capture was bypassing 2016 Windows 13 with black hat vision. I don't know, but what's interesting, like why they moved from the OCR, that's that actually the rendering performance between humans, they would recognize those letters, and the robot was coming too close, and people were getting frustrated, right? Because you're getting too difficult for a person, because they were too like,
You're right. Yeah.
they managed to bypass that. It was very easy. They were just learning.
Yeah. Yeah, so that, right. So is that the question or just a comment? Comment, yeah. So you're right. The CAPTCHA was getting harder and harder for human because they would get, OCR was getting better and computer algorithms were passing them more and more. So they had to make the character more obscure, more difficult, and then you got to a point that usability was so poor, so they had to move on from the first generation CAPTCHA. But CAPTCHA was generated, Manuel Blum, who was a colleague of mine at CMU, I remember CAPTCHA was done when I was there, and I remember he would walk down the corridor at CMU and say, and he would like randomly grab a person and say, what do you think are hard for computer, easy for human? Give me a problem. And he would ask anyone. And then so eventually they zeroed in on this problem of recognizing optical characters. That's the first generation of CAPTCHA. Good observation. Any other questions? Well, I think maybe we're done. Thank you so much.